We know that their language learning relies a lot more on rote memorization than ours. Their language learning consists much more of rote memorization than ours. The education consists to a very large extent of memorization. They're used to memorization, and then they apply those skills to learning a foreign language.
Their memory, right? Obviously, being fantastically greater. And I mean, it's still speculative on my end, let's just say, but not having the amount of distractions, the amount of things, and the amount of writing things, and the amount of machines around them that were able to simply hold data and information. You would need to. I've witnessed it myself. I can tell you every phone number up until 2000, and then there's an immediate drop off, right, where I know none. So their memory, and now I've read Giordano Bruno. I've been, had touches there with, from the Renaissance period, and these guys with these memory techniques, which of course, many of them, of course, citing ancient techniques. How much did that play a role in their everyday life, and how much did that play a role in their language learning, facilitating memory training, anything like that? What sort of evidence, or is there anything there?
Yes. I mean, we know that their language learning relies a lot more on rote memorization than ours. So, for example, what are they doing with these little dialogues? They are memorizing the column in the language that they're learning. And then they're using the column in the language that they already know to make sure they understand it. But then, having memorized it, they're going to go and perform it to show that they've got it by heart, and then they'll memorize another chunk. So their language learning consists much more of rote memorization than ours, and the rote memorization is being done in school. So I may ask my students to memorize something, but I never expect them to do it actually during class. They do the memorization for homework. What am I doing with my students in class? I'm doing things that require them to think. So I might ask them to translate something. I might ask them to maybe write something in the other language. I might ask them to decipher things in various ways, but I want them to think in class. I never, ever want them to memorize during class time. Mm-hmm. And the overall amount of memorization that we ask for is way less, because that's not how our education system works. We want our students to read and think, and as part of that process to kind of naturally pick up knowledge from reading and thinking. But that's just not how it works in the ancient world. The education consists to a very large extent of memorization. Even like your initial education in your first language has a lot more memorization than ours. So like we have to learn the letters of the alphabet, right? That's memorization. But once we've learned the letters of the alphabet, we move on to using them to decipher words. Whereas in the ancient world, there's an intermediate stage between letters and words. There is syllables, and you memorize the syllables. So ba, be, bi, bo, boo, ga, ge, gi, go, goo, etc. You have to be able, just the way with the letters, you have to be able to say the name and write the correct shape. So with the syllables, you have to be able to write the correct shape when somebody says the name, and when somebody shows you the written form, you have to be able to recite it, basically. Mm-hmm. So there's more memorization kind of even within your own language in the literacy learning process. And they also learn lists of vocabulary even within their own language in a way that we just don't do. Okay. So they're used to memorization, and then they apply those skills to learning a foreign language. And the other side of that is they're doing a lot less of the kind of active thinking and decipherment that I expect my students to do today.
Do you see any advantage to that? Not being able to pull out a simple speaker from there, do you think that they had any more of an advantage for having trained their memory more than we do at all?
Well, yes, that they had a lot of stuff in their heads that they could pull out very quickly. And they had an amazing ability to quickly put more stuff in their heads. So, for example, they could write a speech to deliver in court, and they could memorize that speech verbatim and then go into court and deliver it. And that's just not something that we could do. And I'm not talking students here. If somebody handed me a speech and they said, okay, you're on trial for your life, whether or not you get off depends on your ability to memorize this speech and deliver it verbatim in court. You know what? I'd be executed because I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
But they could. Ordinary people could. So they had skills that we don't have, which were clearly immensely advantageous in their world. That comes at a cost. There are things that they didn't learn while they were learning that. They have a lot less of the thinking skills and the deciphering skills that we expect our students to have even from a young age. So definitely there's something that we've lost. We don't have those skills. We live in a society where those skills are less necessary. If I am on trial for my life, I don't have to recite a speech from memory in order to save my life. And arguably that's better, that people's ability to deliver speeches from memory should not be relevant to whether or not they're executed.